I want you to uh, stop whatever you're doing for just a second. Like, really just pause and imagine something with me. Put yourself in this headspace. I want you to imagine being part of a civilization, an entire species that is, undeniably and irreparably dying.
Right, and we're not talking about a slow, peaceful fade into the history books here.
Exactly. No, we aren't talking about a society that just, simply stops having children and quietly turns out the lights. No. Your species is being actively hunted.
Hunted, yeah.
You are the prey of an ultimate predator, like this cosmic entity that is just waiting for you to make a single mistake.
Just one slip up.
Yeah, you let your guard down for one fraction of a second and it consumes your very soul for all of eternity. That is your daily reality.
It creates a baseline for existence that is almost impossible for the human mind to truly process.
Right.
Every waking moment, every artistic endeavor, every conversation is overshadowed by this impending ultimate doom. It's a collective trauma that defines their entire reality.
And here is the truly mind-bending part, the twist that makes this scenario so incredibly grim.
Yeah.
The only guaranteed way to defeat this predator, like the absolute only way to actually secure a victory condition, is to wait until every single member of your species is dead.
Literally everyone.
Including you, your family, your friends, everyone you have ever known or will ever know. Completely biologically dead, total extinction. That is the only way you win.
What's fascinating here is the paradox at the heart of their culture. It's just staggering.
It's completely wild.
To secure the eternal survival and safety of your soul, you must willingly accept the complete annihilation of your biological existence.
It is so heavy. It's this suffocating concept, and it is exactly what we're plunging into today.
Absolutely.
For this deep dive, we've gathered a stack of sources, mostly excerpts from an incredibly dense, fascinating text called The Seventh Path, The Rise of the Ynnari.
Which is a fantastic read, by the way.
Oh, it's brilliant. We also have these foundational narrative texts and lore codexes detailing the 41st millennium, and our mission today is not just to read off a table of contents,
Right, we're not just listing fictional troops and spaceships.
No way.
Yeah.
We are unpacking these texts to really understand the Ynnari. We are looking at them as a profound study in desperation, in radical hope, and the ultimate devastating cost of survival.
Setting that foundation is crucial before we get into the actual events of the text.
Yeah.
As we synthesize these sources, they paint a picture of a species, the Aeldari, who are fundamentally trapped.
Trapped is the perfect word.
They are caught between eternal damnation by an entity the text identifies as Slaanesh, and the incredibly bitter, introspective, passive fate of just watching their kin slowly die out over millennia.
Yeah.
It is a sociological nightmare on a galactic scale.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can even begin to understand the radical, desperate hope of the Ynnari movement, we have to deeply understand the bleak baseline of what it actually means to be Aeldari. We have to look at what I just keep calling the waiting room for the end of the world.
The waiting room is an incredibly apt way to frame it, honestly. The source texts explain that long before the Ynnari movement ever existed, before the events of the Seventh Path, the Aeldari were bound by a very specific, rigidly adhered to belief system.
Right.
It's known as the prophecy of the Whispering God.
Let's get into the mechanics of that prophecy because, it's not just a vague religious text. It's the functional blueprint for their entire society.
It dictates their entire infrastructure, yes. The foundational belief is that when an Aeldari dies, their soul cannot just be allowed to drift out into the universe or, the metaphysical realm.
Because if it does,
Slaanesh, that ultimate predator we mentioned, immediately consumes it.
Right.
So to keep these souls out of the predator's grasp, they are mechanically and spiritually deposited into what the text calls the infinity circuits.
The infinity circuits. I really want to linger on this concept because it is wild to me. Just based on the name, it sounds like a massive, endless digital or spiritual hard drive.
Yeah.
How do the sources actually describe this working?
Think of it as a vast psychocrystalline matrix.
Okay.
These circuits are woven deep into the skeletal structure of their massive city-sized vessels, which they call craft worlds.
So they're physically part of the ship.
Exactly. When an Aeldari passes away, their consciousness, their essence, is transferred into this matrix. It is a sanctuary, sure, but it's also purgatory.
Yeah, that's dark.
You have billions of souls, the accumulated ancestors of their entire race, just swirling around in this closed loop spiritual ecosystem.
Safe from Slaanesh, but completely disconnected from the physical world.
Precisely.
So you basically have these massive floating necropolises drifting through space. But here is the critical part of the prophecy, the part that just blows my mind.
Let's hear it.
The Aeldari believed that these souls just sit there, accumulating over thousands and thousands of years until the absolute last living Aeldari dies. Like, only at that precise moment of total mathematical species extinction will all of those collected souls merge together.
They reach a critical mass.
Yeah.
And upon that final death, those billions of souls fuse to form a new entity, which is Ynnari, the god of the dead.
A god of the dead, born from the literal prophesied extinction of its own worshippers.
It's bleak. And the prophecy continues to state that once Ynnari is fully formed through this mass extinction event, it will rise and trigger a final apocalyptic confrontation called the Ranadandra.
The big final battle.
Right. In this Ranadandra, Ynnari will battle and destroy Slaanesh once and for all, thereby freeing the Aeldari spirits from the eternal threat of damnation.
Wow.
But, as the text explicitly, undeniably states, this salvation requires the absolute biological end of their race.
I really have to push back on the sheer day-to-day logic of this as a functioning society.
I mean, it's hard to grasp.
Think about this from the perspective of a normal person living in that culture. I'll give you an analogy. It's like diligently saving all of your money, every single paycheck, into a high-yield doomsday vault.
Right, locking it away.
Yeah, you are putting every penny away, sacrificing your present happiness, never going on vacation, never buying anything nice. But the vault only unlocks and pays out the day after your entire family and everyone you have ever known is dead.
A payout with nobody to claim it.
Exactly. What is the point of the massive payout if there's absolutely no one left to spend it? How do you even wake up in the morning?
Yeah.
How do you go to work or create art or fall in love or decide to have a child when the ultimate, universally accepted goal of your entire species is to politely wait to die?
The psychological weight of that scenario is exactly what makes the Aeldari so fascinating to study. You're hitting on the core defining trauma of their civilization prior to the events in our source text.
Right.
We're looking at a culture that has been entirely built around the concept of a sacrificial hope.
Sacrificial hope. I mean, that is a massive oxymoron. Hope implies looking forward to a better tomorrow. Sacrifice implies giving up today.
It is a profound contradiction. It's a society that has, on a fundamental institutional level, accepted extinction as a prerequisite for spiritual salvation.
Unbelievable.
If you analyze what that passive waiting game does to a civilization's drive, the results are deeply tragic. If your ultimate prophesied victory requires your biological end, the motivation to innovate completely vanishes.
Why bother?
Exactly. Why expand your territory? Why invent new technologies? Why try to reclaim the last glory of your past empire?
You wouldn't. You would just stagnate. You would become a society of museum curators, basically, dusting off the artifacts of your own slow demise.
Stagnation is the inevitable result. They become completely introspective. The society's entire focus shifts to managing the decline.
Right, maintaining the status quo.
They ensure the craft worlds keep running so the infinity circuits stay powered, but they don't build a new future. They are essentially groundskeepers for a galactic graveyard.
Groundskeepers for a galactic graveyard. That's a haunting way to put it.
The psychological toll of that, of looking at your own child and knowing they are ultimately just a future battery for a nascent death god. It breeds a culture of profound melancholy and extreme paralyzing caution. Every single death is mourned as a terrible tragedy, but simultaneously logged as a necessary drop in the bucket for this unfathomable doomsday plan.
I really want you, the listener, to think about that feeling in the context of your own life. Have you ever felt stuck in a situation, maybe a toxic workplace or a failing relationship, or even a broader societal expectation, where the accepted wisdom or the only realistic way out was so unbelievably bleak that it just paralyzed you?
It strips away all your agency.
It really does. It kept you from trying anything new, from taking any risks, because the established narrative said, look, this is just how it is. It's going to end badly no matter what you do, so just keep your head down and wait it out.
Endure.
Yeah, that is the baseline Aeldari experience. It is the ultimate cosmic paralysis.
And that paralysis, according to the lore we're analyzing, lasted for an unimaginable span of time. Millennia of rigid, stoic adherence to the plan.
Thousands and thousands of years.
But sociological pressure cookers eventually fail. When the despair reaches a certain critical threshold, something snaps.
It has to.
The text shows us the exact moment when the Aeldari move from the passive acceptance of death to incredibly dangerous, chaotic interference.
Yes. The moment someone finally looked at this doomsday vault, looked at the slow, agonizing decline of their people, and said, you know what, waiting for extinction is not good enough.
Right.
I am opening the vault early. And that brings us to what the text frames as the spark of heresy.
The narrative introduces a pivotal figure named High Farseer Eldrad Ulthran of the craft world Ulthwé.
A farseer, so someone who looks into the future. Let's define what that means in this universe, because it's not just, gazing into a crystal ball, is it?
Not at all. It is a highly complex, highly dangerous form of psychic navigation.
Okay.
A farseer doesn't just see one static future. They perceive the myriad branching paths of fate. They navigate the timeline like a multidimensional maze, trying to steer their people away from paths that lead to destruction and toward paths that lead to survival.
So Eldrad is someone whose entire job is to look down the timeline. And he looks at this slow, miserable march toward the Ranadandra, this agonizing wait for extinction, and he decides to gamble.
Massive gamble.
The text notes that during an event called the Battle of Port de Mesnes, Eldrad attempts a ritual of unprecedented danger. His ultimate goal, to prematurely awaken Ynnari.
Exactly.
He tries to skip to the end of the book without reading the chapters.
That's a great way to put it.
He wants the god of the dead to wake up and fight Slaanesh right now, but he wants to keep the biological species alive to enjoy the victory? How does he actually plan to do that?
The mechanics of the ritual are where the true danger lies. Eldrad is essentially attempting a massive psychic manipulation. He is trying to siphon the aggregated spiritual weight of trillions of souls resting in the infinity circuit, drawing on their power to coalesce the god, but without actually requiring the final physical deaths of the living Aeldari to act as the catalyst.
That sounds like trying to extract all the radioactive energy from a nuclear reactor core with a pair of tweezers and, a lot of wishful thinking.
It's incredibly volatile.
The potential for catastrophic spiritual feedback must be off the charts.
The risks were astronomical. If he loses control, he doesn't just fail, he potentially shatters the infinity circuits, dumping trillions of defenseless souls directly into the jaws of Slaanesh.
Oh, wow.
It is a gamble of unparalleled hubris. And, as the text reveals, the ritual fails.
Which feels entirely appropriate, honestly. You don't just hijack a cosmic doomsday clock, mess with the foundational spiritual laws of your species, and walk away without consequences.
No, you really don't. The ritual is disrupted, but while it fails to fully awaken the god, it does something perhaps even more destabilizing.
It stirs things up.
It rouses the nascent entity from its slumber.
Yeah.
It stirs the pot, exactly. Ynnari is no longer just a passive accumulation of souls. It has achieved a state of semi-consciousness. And this partial awakening sets in motion the founding of the entire Ynnari movement.
And here is where the narrative tone of the text shifts so drastically and so brilliantly. It goes from this high-minded, sterile, incredibly complex psychic ritual performed by an elite farseer to something brutally visceral.
Yeah, a complete genre shift.
Because Aniad, this god of the dead, is now awake, well, at least partially. It needs an emissary. It needs a physical conduit in the mortal realm to enact its will. And where does this fragment of divine ultimate power end up?
The fragment is imparted to a wandering Aeldari warrior named Yvraine.
But let's look at exactly where she is and what she is doing when this divine intervention happens.
Right.
She is not meditating in a temple. She is lying, bleeding out, actively dying in the dirt of the witch-cult arenas of Camorra.
Such a stark contrast.
I have to stop and ask a pointed question here because it feels like a massive contradiction in the lore. Why?
Why her?
Yeah, why would a nascent god of the dead, a god literally formed from the souls of millions of stoic, careful, emotionally suppressed people resting in high-tech, sterile infinity circuits, choose a dying gladiator in a bloody, cruel, chaotic arena as its ultimate emissary?
It's a fascinating paradox.
Why not choose a high priest? Why not choose Eldrad himself, the guy who actually orchestrated the ritual?
What's fascinating here is the text uses this choice to signal a profound thematic shift in the nature of their salvation. Up until the moment Yvraine is chosen, the Aeldari concept of salvation was, as you noted, completely sterile.
Super clinical.
It was the infinity circuits. It was passive evasion. It was hiding your soul away in a digital afterlife and hoping for the best.
It was clean, it was safe, it was deeply detached from the messy reality of being alive.
Camorra, however, is the absolute antithesis of that.
Oh, yeah.
Camorra is the hidden city of the Drukhari, the dark mirror to the craft worlds. And specifically, the witch cult arenas, there is nothing sterile or passive about them.
Just blood and sand.
They're defined by blood, mud, adrenaline, and violent, desperate, moment-to-moment survival. By having the fragment of Ynnari choose Yvraine as she lies dying in that specific environment, the god of the dead is making a statement.
It's moving the entire concept of salvation from the waiting room directly onto the battlefield.
Precisely. Yvraine is not a passive vessel waiting to be filled. She is a gladiator. She had to violently fight for every single breath she took in those arenas.
Right.
The fragment of Ynnari bypasses the priests and the farseers and chooses a survivor. It chooses the fighter, someone intimately, physically acquainted with the active, messy, agonizing reality of death, rather than the philosophical, detached concept of it.
The text explicitly states that she becomes the emissary of Ynnari. And alongside her enigmatic protector, a figure known as the Visarch, she doesn't just walk out of the arena.
No, she fights her way out.
She cuts a bloody path to freedom. She literally fights her way out of Camorra to become the prophet of a brand new creed.
Her violent escape is a microcosm of the entire faction's new philosophy. They are no longer waiting to die. They are actively fighting for life, and they are using the power of death as their primary weapon to do it. They take on the moniker of the Reborn.
The Reborn, that implies a total restart, a second chance that you have to, claw your way out of the grave to get.
It is a radical departure from millennia of established doctrine. Their explicit goal, the very foundation of the Ynnari, as stated in the source text, is the outright rejection of extinction.
Which is huge.
They intend to fully awaken Ynnari, to trigger the god of the dead, but they intend to do it without sacrificing every last one of their kind.
Which, when you really analyze it, is a massive theological and political rebellion.
Huge.
They are looking at the oldest, most foundational truth of their entire civilization, the mathematically accepted fact that everyone must die to win, and they are simply saying, no, we reject the premise, we are finding a loophole.
A loophole they have to carve out themselves.
Right. But to pull off this impossible theological heist, Yvraine runs into a massive logistical problem. A prophet is absolutely nothing without followers.
Exactly.
She has this fragment of divine power. She has her protector, the Visarch. But to enact this plan, she faces what has to be the most difficult political challenge imaginable in this universe.
She has to achieve the unification of the Aeldari diaspora.
Yes. Here's where it gets really interesting, and where the sociological nightmare kicks into high gear. To awaken this god and save the species, the text says they must unify the wildly fractured, deeply antagonistic Aeldari factions. And let's just look at the list the text provides, because the cultural gaps here are staggering.
They really are.
First, they need the Asuryani of the craft worlds.
Or stoic traditionalists. The ones who suppress all of their emotions to stay hidden from Slaanesh. The ones who manage the infinity circuits.
Right. Then they need the Drukhari of Camorra, the ones who run the bloody arenas Yvraine just escaped from.
And the Drukhari survived the fall of their empire by taking the exact opposite approach of the Asuryani.
Yeah, no emotional suppression there.
Instead of suppressing emotion, they feed on it. They are a society built entirely on cruelty, torture, and self-preservation at the literal expense of others' pain.
Then, as if that binary isn't difficult enough, we add in the wandering Aeldari corsairs, who are essentially space pirates with no fixed allegiance.
Right.
We add the isolated Exodites, who rejected technology to ride dinosaurs on harsh maiden worlds.
A wild departure from the rest.
And finally, the enigmatic Harlequins, who are warrior performers following their own laughing god. I mean, think about this analogy for a second.
Okay.
It is like trying to get a vow of silence monk, a bloodthirsty hostile pirate, a deeply paranoid off-the-grid isolationist, and a sadistic arena fighter to all share a tiny, leaky life raft.
That's a volatile mix.
While actively trying to get them to row in the exact same direction without murdering each other? How do you possibly bridge a cultural gap between pathologically stoic and recreationally cruel?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the sociology of that unification requires an unprecedented, almost unthinkable force.
Yeah.
You cannot bridge a gap between stoic caution and sadistic cruelty with a polite diplomatic treaty or a summit.
No way.
The text gives us a very specific phrase for how the Ynnari operate. It describes their culture as one of fervent faith and pragmatic unity.
Pragmatic unity. That sounds incredibly cold. That does not sound like a warm, fuzzy, we are all one people alliance.
Because it isn't. It is an alliance forged in the absolute crucible of desperation. We have to call it what it is. The Ynnari are a death cult.
Right.
They are united by a singular, terrifying belief that Ynned is their only viable salvation from Slaanesh.
The ultimate predator is at the door, so you stop arguing about the wallpaper.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What we are analyzing in the text is the profound sociology of extreme existential threats. You have millennia of deep-seated cultural hatred. You have vastly different philosophical answers to the question of survival.
Yeah, fundamentally different worldviews.
You have the historical reality that the Drukkaris have likely spent the last 10,000 years routinely raiding, enslaving, and torturing the Asuryani. All of that incredibly valid historical trauma has to be overridden.
That is a massive ask.
And the only psychological mechanism capable of overriding that much hatred is a threat so massive, so immediate, and so universally terrifying that cooperation becomes the literal only alternative to having your soul consumed forever.
It's the old adage, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, but dialed up to a cosmic, spiritual, apocalyptic level.
Way beyond normal politics.
They aren't holding hands and singing songs of unity. They're standing back to back, weapons drawn, because they know if they turn around to fight each other, they'll both get eaten by a god.
The application of this pragmatic unity is incredibly violent, too.
Yeah.
The text explicitly notes that since their flight from Camorra, the Ynnari have plunged headlong into pivotal conflicts across the galaxy.
Right, they aren't just hiding.
They leave what the sources describe as a trail of shattered worlds.
Let's pause and really look at that phrase. A trail of shattered worlds. This isn't a peaceful spiritual awakening where missionaries hand out pamphlets.
No, it's brutal.
This is a bulldozer of a religious movement.
It highlights the deeply destructive nature of their hope. The text frames them as the last desperate hope of a dying race, but the narrative ensures we understand that this hope is not benign.
It has a massive cost.
To achieve their goal, to forge this seventh path, and awaken their god without dying themselves, they are willing to completely tear the galaxy apart. They are aggressively breaking centuries of carefully managed stasis.
Which brings up a fascinating philosophical point about the nature of hope itself.
How so?
Well, we are socially conditioned to code hope as a purely positive, constructive, glowing thing.
Sure.
But the text is showing us that hope, when it is born from absolute sheer desperation, can be just as destructive and chaotic as malice.
That's very true.
Think about it. If you are drowning in the middle of the ocean and someone throws you a life preserver, you don't politely catch it and thank them. You claw at it. You panic.
You scramble. In your sheer panic to climb aboard and survive, you might accidentally drown the person who was trying to save you. The Ynnari's hope is a panicked, thrashing, violent thing.
That is a highly perceptive reading of the source material subtext. They are a massive destabilizing force in the universe.
Yeah.
They are taking a galaxy defined by grim certainty, the slow, managed decline of the craft worlds, the cruel predictability of Camorra, and they are injecting a massive, volatile, wildly unpredictable variable right into the center of it.
But just as this impossible coalition, this life raft of warring ideologies, actually starts to gain momentum.
Well, just as your rain starts to get people rowing in the same direction, they hit a brick wall.
A very literal and metaphorical brick wall.
And it's not just a speed bump or a minor logistical issue. It is an impasse that threatens to end the entire movement instantly. And the threat comes from the outside and, horrifyingly, from their own kind.
This brings us to the ultimate, tangible challenge outlined in the text. The Ynnari's mission, the actual physical mechanism of waking the god without mass extinction, relies on a highly specific quest.
Right.
They need to gather 5 ancient artifacts known as the Crone Swords.
Which, on the surface, sounds like a classic mythic quest, right? Find the 5 mystical objects, bring them together, unlock the ultimate power, save the world.
Functionally, the structure of the quest is classic myth. But the text states that this quest has reached a critical, seemingly insurmountable impasse.
Because they've found most of them, haven't they?
They have managed, against all odds, to find 4 of the 5 swords. Presumably, they secured these 4 through the immense cost and violence of those shattered worlds we just discussed.
Yeah.
But the 5th and final sword is entirely out of their reach.
And it isn't just lost behind the couch on some forgotten planet. Where exactly is the 5th sword?
The text reveals that the 5th Crone Sword was discovered by a keeper of secrets, a greater demon, an entity named Shalaxi Hellbane.
A greater demon.
And Shalaxi didn't just hide it. The demon took this final Crone Sword directly into the Palace of Slaanesh, located in the absolute heart of the Realm of Chaos.
I want to really emphasize how utterly devastating this is for the listener to grasp. Imagine you are running a marathon. You have trained for years, you have bled, you have alienated your friends, you have destroyed your own body, you have compromised your morals just to get to the finish line.
Mm.
You are at mile 26. You can literally see the tape waiting for you. And suddenly, the finish line is picked up and moved inside the active, bubbling crater of an erupting volcano.
That's exactly it.
That is what this is. They have reached the 99% mark of their impossible quest, only to have the final, necessary piece locked inside the literal headquarters of their ultimate predator.
We need to unpack what the realm of chaos actually means in this context, because it elevates the impossibility of the task. The realm of chaos isn't just a heavily fortified enemy planet you can fly a spaceship to.
Right, it's not physical in the normal sense.
It is a metaphysical dimension formed of pure, unfiltered emotion and nightmare. Entering the Palace of Slaanesh to retrieve a physical object is akin to a gazelle trying to retrieve a dropped item from the digestive tract of a lion.
Oh, that's a visceral image.
It defies the physical and spiritual laws of their reality. The text states that for many within the movement, the completion of the seventh path now seems all but impossible.
You would think, logically, that this massive external tragedy, this impossible roadblock, would unite the Aeldari even more.
You'd hope so.
That they would look at this situation and say, okay, the ultimate enemy has our final key. We must put aside every single grievance, pool every resource we have, and band together to figure out how to storm the gates of hell.
But that's not what happens.
No, because human or Aeldari nature doesn't work like that, does it? The enemy isn't just Slaanesh anymore. The enemy is within.
The text is very explicit about the intense, violent backlash the Ynnari face from their own kind. It isn't just a lack of support, it is active hostility. The traditionalist Aeldari do not view Yvain as a savior who has hit a stroke of bad luck. They view the Ynnari as a deeply dangerous, heretical death cult.
A heretical death cult. So let's really look at the irony here.
It's palpable.
The traditionalists, the people who were perfectly fine waiting for the entire species to biologically expire so their souls could form a god in the infinity circuits, are calling the people trying to prevent extinction a death cult.
I know, it sounds crazy.
The irony is thick enough to cut with one of those crone swords.
It seems like glaring hypocrisy on the surface. But this raises an important question, and if we analyze the traditionalist perspective impartially, exactly as the text presents their fears, their logic is actually chillingly sound.
Walk me through their logic. Defend the traditionalists here, because to me it seems like absolute madness to fight the only people actively trying to save you from eternal damnation.
Put yourself in the shoes of a traditionalist Asuryani leader, an autarch or a farseer on a major craft world. For 10,000 years, your society has survived by the skin of its teeth by being incredibly, painstakingly careful.
Right.
You rigidly control your emotions to avoid drawing Slaanesh's gaze. You hide your presence in the galaxy. You carefully, reverently manage the souls of your dead in the infinity circuits. You have a plan.
It's a terrible plan, but it's a plan.
Exactly. The Ranadandra is grim, yes, but it is a known quantity.
It is the accepted doom. It's the doomsday vault we talked about earlier. They made peace with it.
Exactly. The status quo is deeply depressing, but it is entirely predictable.
Yeah.
Now, along comes Yvain.
With her chaotic energy.
She is a former gladiator from Camorra, a place that represents everything you despise and fear about your own species' potential for depravity. She claims she has a fragment of the death god inside her. She is pulling souls away from the accepted safe path of the infinity circuits. And worse, much worse, she is actively kicking the hornet's nest.
Ah, she is drawing the predator's attention.
By trying to prematurely awaken Ynnari, by waging these massive wars and shattering worlds, she is dangerously meddling with cosmic forces far beyond her control. The traditionalists look at the Ynnari, and they don't see a life raft. They see a lit match in a room full of gunpowder.
Oh, wow.
They see a rogue faction that is drawing the eye of chaos, bringing the wrath of demons down upon them all far faster than it would have otherwise come.
So it's a fundamental conflict between controlled, predictable extinction on one side and chaotic, incredibly risky survival on the other.
Exactly that.
The traditionalists prefer the absolute certainty of the doomsday vault over the wild, violent gamble of the seventh path.
And that resistance isn't just a matter of philosophical disagreements debated in the pristine halls of the craft worlds.
No.
The text highlights that the Drukhari, specifically led by an ancient, terrifying tyrant named Asdrubal Vecht, see the Ynnari's cause as a direct existential threat to their way of life. Vecht has declared himself as sworn enemy of the reborn.
Okay, I have to push back hard on Vecht's logic here based on the lore we've established.
Let's hear it.
We know the Drukhari's are cruel, and we know Vecht is the ultimate tyrant. But he is still an Aeldari. His soul is just as much at risk of being consumed by Slaanesh as anyone else's. In fact, given his sins, probably more so.
Undeniably more so.
Why would an ancient, presumably highly intelligent, incredibly cunning leader actively fight against the only movement trying to secure eternal salvation without the cost of total extinction? Is holding on to his current political power in Comor really more important to him than the ultimate survival of his own soul?
You are applying standard rational logic to a being whose psychology is almost entirely alien to us.
Fair point.
We have to look at the mechanics of Vecht's existence. He is a tyrant who has ruled Comor for 10,000 years. For Vecht, power isn't just a political tool, it is the only currency that matters, the only thing keeping him alive. The Ynnari represent a fundamental, foundational disruption to his entire power structure.
Because they offer the citizens of Comor an alternative to his cruelty.
Precisely the opposite of his methodology. If the Drukhari start believing in Inuit, if they start following Yvrain's promise of spiritual salvation, they stop fearing Vecht's physical tortures.
And fear is all he has.
Right. The Ynnari's pragmatic unity undermines the very foundation of Comora, which relies entirely on division, backstabbing, extreme cruelty, and rigid hierarchy to function.
Yeah.
Vecht's logic is the ultimate expression of tyranny's story. Survival without absolute supremacy isn't survival at all. He would rather rule as a god in a doomed, slowly decaying realm of nightmare than risk losing his grip on power to a new religious movement, even if that movement objectively promises his salvation.
That is just...
To Vecht, salvation means absolutely nothing if he isn't the one sitting on the throne dictating the terms.
It is the absolute pinnacle of political hubris. He would rather the ship sink into the abyss with him as the undisputed captain than let someone else steer them to a safe harbor. It just adds such a crushing, suffocating layer of despair to the Ynnari's mission. They aren't just fighting the literal monsters and demons in the realm of chaos. They are fighting the entrenched bureaucracy, the deep-seated terror, and the sheer stubborn, suicidal pride of their own dying species.
Which brings us perfectly to the ultimate synthesis of this entire source text. The section that truly encapsulates their struggle is titled The Ultimate Horror of the Ynnari.
Because the horror isn't just the monsters they fight with swords, the horror is internal.
The horror is what their existence represents on a philosophical level. The text explicitly calls them the embodiment of a race's final, desperate gamble.
A gamble. By definition, a gamble means you are wagering something you cannot afford to lose on odds you cannot control. And they have already pushed all their chips to the center of the table.
Very last one.
They have wagered their worlds, their societal stability, and the fragile, ancient peace of their diaspora.
They looked at the long, slow, culturally accepted fade into oblivion in the waiting room of the infinity circuits, and they said no. They rejected the bitter, introspective fate of their kin. They chose to fight for a future that, especially now with the final crone sword locked away in the palace of Slaanesh, seems mathematically impossible to achieve.
So, what does this all mean? For you, the listener, absorbing all of this dense lore and sociology, I want you to think about the sheer weight of what we've unpacked today. In a universe defined by grim certainty, the Ynnari are the only ones truly clinging to hope.
That's right.
But as we've seen, it is not a comforting, warm hope. It's a jagged, bleeding, dangerous hope. It's a hope that requires you to ally with your worst abusers, like the Drukhari, just to have a fighting chance.
A terrible compromise.
It's a hope that alienates your oldest friends, the traditionalists who now actively hunt you and call you a heretic.
The text ensures we understand this cost. It notes explicitly that this hope has shattered their homeworlds and alienated their oldest allies. The cure the Ynnari offer is currently indistinguishable from the disease of war, chaos, and destruction they are desperately trying to escape.
It genuinely makes you wonder if the traditionalists were right all along.
Oh, well, yeah.
Not morally right, perhaps, but practically right. Maybe the quiet death, the slow accumulation of souls in the infinity circuit was the better play, because the Ynnari have traded a quiet, guaranteed doom for a loud, bloody, highly improbable chance at survival.
A very loud doom.
They haven't brought peace to their people. They have brought a violent civil war to a species that is already on cosmic life support.
Which leaves us with the terrifying, unresolved question posed at the very end of the text. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, is a desperate, violent hope truly better than no hope at all?
It is the defining question of their entire existence. You have to ask yourself, if you were in Yvrain's shoes, bleeding out in that arena, would you make the same choice?
Would you?
Would you wake the sleeping god, knowing the absolute hell, the civil war, and the shattering of worlds it would unleash on your own people, just for a fraction of a percent of a chance at a real future?
As we synthesize everything we have explored today, the paralyzing doomsday vault of the infinity circuits, the bloody, visceral rebirth in the witch arenas of Camorra, the impossible sociology of the seventh path, and the crushing, seemingly insurmountable impasse of the lost crone sword.
Yeah.
I want to leave you, our listener, with a final thought to explore on your own.
Lay it on us. Give us the final takeaway.
Consider the ultimate paradox of the Ynnari's mission, and perhaps of radical movements in general. If achieving your ultimate salvation requires you to destroy the very foundations of your society, if it requires you to alienate everyone you have ever known, to shatter your own homeworlds and trigger catastrophic wars amongst your own dying kin, well, at the absolute end of that seventh path, are you actually saving yourself? Or have you simply chosen a much louder, much bloodier form of extinction?
A heavy, heavy question to end on. Thank you so much for joining us today on this deep dive.
Thank you for listening. Keep exploring.